is cloudless compute, first of all? What is true decentralized compute? It has to have two attributes, which is fault tolerance and verifiability. And so the Fluence network will be always on, global, and self-healing from downtime. And it's not controlled by any one entity. And there's a variety of definitions of decentralization and a spectrum of it potentially. But the key piece is understanding, for us, decentralization, the critical piece is it's not controlled by any one entity or small number of entities. And whether it's 1,000 nodes or 1,000,000 nodes, the lack of control that anyone has is what really renders it decentralized. And so what's special about Fluence Cloudless? Well, it's real-time tolerance and failover built in. And that means your compute is provisioned to the network, and if the provider goes down, that compute is automatically re-provisioned to another provider. All right, that's very different when you have transparent, costless switching between providers. That allows you to create an actual cloud alternative. You also have verifiability and auditability of compute. So you can verify that compute was run on specific data. And that is necessary for a whole number of AI use cases, for regulatory and audit use cases as well. And low cost. This we think is about 80% cheaper than the cloud. And there was a question on Impossible Cloud's presentation about where low cost comes from. And so here it's worth spending a moment on this. Fluence is a CPU network currently. There are excess CPUs, not just in people's houses, but in top-tier data centers. These CPUs are sitting there unused, and so they are effectively sunk costs for those providers. They profit by just covering the cost of electricity to have those run. And so when you can offer a provider revenue for running their idle equipment, that they will take that at a far lower price than what they may charge a customer who will commit for a long period of time. And so, we are, another kind of message here is that the compute that Fluence runs is not a string of laptops in people's houses. Our first providers, I'm going to go into later, are 6 top-tier data centers that run FANG technology and FANG servers. And even those data centers have excess CPUs that people are looking to monetize. The other component here is that Fluence is serverless. The serverless offering is complex. Very few companies can offer it, and so Fluence can offer a product to these data centers they are unable to offer, that are accustomed to renting out a server for an extended period of time. Serverless, on-demand, entirely new product, entirely more complex to offer that they can't. And so those are a couple reasons why the cost and the price is far lower than centralized clouds. And so why cloudless? Well, it's also secure. There's no single point of failure. When you have a network that is operating with dozens of data centers or hundreds of data centers, there's no point of failure. When the network goes down and automatically, when a provider goes down and it reprovisions automatically, that is much more secure than one particular provider. It's distributed, we talked about that. There's censorship benefits to it for sure. Cheaper, we've talked about it. Verifiable also, and it's green. And this is an interesting point because there's certain data providers and data centers we have on the Fluence network that are only operating on sustainable energy. And so you can select, you want your compute to only run from renewable. And that is a criteria that you can use at Fluence that is not possible in traditional centralized clouds. We are attempting to move on. There we go. So benefits, and we've talked about a couple of these: verifiable, censorship resistant, and low cost. The last one is buildable. And this is really important, and this is a critical attribute of decentralization. But when you have compute running on a decentralized network, that module, that program is now out. No one controls that anymore. The author no longer has control. It's running out there. And as long as any customer wants to pay a host to run that program, to run that module, it will keep running. That means if you are using that module, you're not forced into upgrade cycles, and you can build on it with the security and comfort of knowing that won't change, it won't be decommissioned, it won't be taken away. And so the buildability we think is a terrific advantage of running decentralized. If you're running on a cloud stack, they may decide to change or alter any of the components on which you've built, which then leads to a number of tooling update requirements for your project, for your protocol, for your application. If you run decentralized and these applications can be hosted anywhere in the world by any provider, then you are not subject to that upgrade cycle. You're not subject to that risk. And you can actually build on and that gets to the application layer. An application can run that way, which means that application can't be shut down, which means you can build on top of an application with the same certainty. And we haven't yet seen that. So what isn't cloudless? A marketplace isn't enough. And we see a lot of marketplaces out there. And you see compute marketplaces, but my browser is actually a marketplace. I can choose between Google and Amazon just on my browser, and that is, does not make it decentralized. You need to have resiliency, verifiability, and cloud services, or you are not cloudless. And so what also do you need? You have to have a stack. And so Fluence has built an analogy to the cloud stack with different software layers that allow the tooling and help the tooling necessary to actually run applications. And so you need to have all of these different components in order to serve applications and to serve customers. This list of services is just the beginning. We need a lot more tooling and a lot more services to really compete with the cloud, but this is the outline, the skeleton, which we will fill in to allow basically web scale applications to run on Fluence. And that's why we think the Fluence is the next generation of compute. And so you started off with mainframes and desktops, as everybody knows, and the next generation was AWS and the centralized cloud, Google Cloud, et cetera. That has been a huge development over time, and that has become an enormous business. But we think cloudless is the next iteration, and probably this decentralized cloud is the final iteration where applications can run completely decentralized. But how do you structure the token economics to make this work? And this is the hard bit, because you can create some of this technology, but you need to have the economics right in order to have the incentives and the security. So first, you want to attract long-term providers and reward consistent network participation. So when you are paid in tokens on the Fluence network, those tokens vest over 6 months. And so if you decommission and you take off your compute right away, you lose the rewards that you've earned. So right away, that incents people to keep their network and their compute online for a longer period of time. And that means every day it's online, they earn more rewards, and that's 6 months until those are fully vested, right? So once you're on, you have a real incentive, and hopefully a growing incentive, to stay online. And so you obviously will take some market volatility over that period of time, but ideally, token over long periods of time goes up, and the incentive to stay online only grows. And this is FLT is so that is kind of the vesting reward. Vesting of rewards is kind of point one. The next problem is a low token price, a high token price. You got to be careful, because if your token price goes down, your provider's costs are in fiat, and they will not have enough to cover their costs. That is a problem. And if they turn off, then your network goes down. And the high token price, this is something not thought about as much, but in a high token price scenario, they may not have interest in actually serving customers. They're too happy earning coins, and they don't actually care about customers. And we've seen this happen in multiple protocols, where in the real moon scenarios, they don't want to do the work with dealing with customers. And so you really don't want to have that happen. And what's our objective? We want a stable reward to attract utility providers, not just speculators counting on a high token price at some point. And so how do we do that? We calibrate the rewards in fiat, but pay in FLT. And so what that means is we calibrate a reward which is $10 per core per month. So it's roughly $600 per CPU per month. And so if the token price is 50 cents, as an example, that $600 reward would be 1,200 FLT. If FLT went up to $2, that $600 reward is now 300 FLT. So that recalibration, and it's not a minute by minute, that calibration happens a max of 10% a day, which is per epoch. So it always is going to trail, right? It's always going to trail. But that calibration helps mitigate the over-reward that some people may get, and also the under-reward, because we don't know where this price is going to be in a month or 6 months or a year. So it's kind of bizarre for us to arbitrarily set a crypto token reward when we have no idea what the market is, where Bitcoin is, the adoption of Fluence. It's really hard to do that. So, and how many providers will be on Fluence. So this recalibration, I think, is a really important piece to link things back to fiat. And there's also, and staking works the same way. And so staking is the same concept. Where to stake, it takes $12,000 per compute provider, $200 per core, again, in FLT. So if FLT falls, you need to buy more FLT for the stake when you restake. If FLT goes up, you need less FLT to restake. So you stake to the compute provider is proof of capacity, and the reward goes back to the compute provider. Again, that 600 we spoke about earlier. And then the question becomes, how much does the investor get? And this is a marketplace delegation. We think it'll be between 5% and 40%, but the rewards are split. Every time an investor enters into a delegation agreement with a compute provider, that they determine what that split is up front. So the investor knows, I'm going to get 10% of the reward, 20% of the reward, 50% of the reward. That's determined upfront for as long as that compute contract is in line. And those compute contracts can go from 1 month to 2 years. And we expect to see a range of durations and delegation staking prices to fluctuate based on what those ranges are as well. And so the other part to think about here is, will people want the token or will people want stable coins? Because when there's useful work, the providers earn stable coins and they do not earn FLT. And we clearly want to incentivize useful work, people to be paid in stable coins, and for the network to generate substantial use. And so some compute providers probably will want FLT, some will want the stablecoin payments. Stablecoin payments, no vesting, right? So they may charge less than what they would receive in FLT. But some providers may want the FLT, so they may charge more because they think FLT is going to go up. So they actually will charge more than what they would receive in FLT because they're really bullish on FLT. Others may be more traditional Web 2 data centers and be like, you know what? I really don't want FLT. If FLT is $10 in FLT and invest over 6 months, I'll sell compute for $8 because I can get that stablecoin today with no vesting. And so we expect there, and other people like $10 FLT, I think it's going to 20. I'm going to charge 14 for compute, right? That's what makes a marketplace. And so we expect to see a range of pricing based on people's interest in receiving FLT and their comfort with the vesting schedule. So what's the scale of FLT staking? And again, this is interesting because it goes back to the USD value. And so our goal this summer is to have about 1,000 CPUs, 64-core CPUs. That requires about 12 million of FLT stake. And by next summer, our goal is to have about 50,000 CPUs. That would require $600 million of FLT stake in order for that to actually be operational and running rewards. And that 50,000 CPUs is a big number, but we're not talking GPUs here. These are CPUs, and there are billions of them in the world, and that's about the size of one Amazon data center. And they're individual providers we're talking to, multiple of which are able to partner with us to deliver that amount of CPUs to the network. So that is our goal, and that's our objective to get to that. And that just gives you a sense of scale that we think is out there and is what the potential could be in the sort of next 12 to 18 months. Who are we partnered with? So we partnered with top-tier data centers. These are people I mentioned before, and this is a real, I think, important element of DePIN to focus on. When people think of DePIN and think of crowdsourced infrastructure, they think of retail infrastructure, they think of laptops and home computers. But every mining and every single type of Web3 infrastructure has started off with home hardware and has migrated to institutional hardware faster and faster and faster. Bitcoin miners started off at home in basements. They are now publicly traded companies with multi-billion-dollar market caps running, massive data centers. We've seen it with Filecoin. Started off with people storing in their homes, and that quickly moved to purpose-built data centers for storage, right? And so we're shortcutting that immediately by starting with some of the top data centers and data center infrastructure in the world from day one. We are also enabling retail storage, and I think we'll see retail storage compute as well. But our focus is, and what we think customers really want, are institutional quality data centers running very reliable compute around the world. And that has been our kind of a knowledge and focus from the beginning. These groups here have about 4,000 servers that they can commit to us. 200,000 cores, and that's just the early bit. I think this group actually could be probably 10,000 servers. We just haven't gotten there yet, and we're sort of slowly ramping up the capacity on Fluence. Couple quick points. Fluence is governed by a DAO. We governed it from a DAO from the beginning. We set up the DAO in February. Actually, set up the DAO in December. Had a token generation event in February, and the token started trading in March. So that is what governs the DAO. So on-chain voting governs almost everything with regard to Fluence from the very beginning, from the first day of network launch. And how big can this be? We think about how open platforms capture value. Right, Ethereum, this value is a little bit dated given the last week's news and given some of the ETF news. So I think we're significantly above that given where things have moved, which is terrific. But we think of Fluence as an open alternative to the cloud, and that is just a vast market. We will not capture all of it. We will capture some piece of it, but it is vast. And so us, with a variety of the speakers here, are excited to attack that market and take pieces of it. And if you have the right token economics, I think you have a real potential to create a lot of value. And so want to thank our investors, including 1KX, who are here obviously in sponsoring this, in giving us the capital to attack this very important market and to help free the world from the oligopolist clouds. I think we all need, if we do not beat the clouds and we do not have an open alternative to the clouds, we are going to live in a very different world, which is, I think, none of us will enjoy. So whether it's Fluence or whether it's another decentralized compute provider, compute is the last piece left to decentralize, and if we don't do it, we're all running on Amazon, we're all running on Google, and that is a very, very disappointing world that I don't think anyone here is excited about. So please help Fluence, help other decentralized compute providers by any type of participation, because this group is the one that is going to help us basically keep us all free. So thank you for your time, and appreciate your attention.